Kyle and I actually have a kind of parallel startup story. We both started with service-based companies. We had offices next to each other in the Hydrostone, and we made some different kind of like choices along the way. And the reality is, like, we're sitting here today, and this man has made a lot of unconventional decisions that got him to like startup like stardom. And so I'm excited to ask him questions to kind of poke into how he got there. And I'm just going to jump right in to, so anybody who doesn't know you here or is watching from home, tell us about how Proposify, which is your company, tell us what it is and how it started.
So I started off taking graphic design at NSCC. That was that's what I did right out of high school. So I never thought I was going to be an entrepreneur, a business owner, that kind of thing. And worked in agencies for a few years doing design before basically going out on my own as a freelancer. That was kind of my first kick at entrepreneurship. Did that for about a year, and then Kevin, who's my co-founder at Proposify, he is somebody that I met while I was working at agencies, and he and I started an agency together doing web design and marketing called Headspace.
Talent and he scooped him up. Is what happened.
Yeah.
He saw you and he was like, I want him on my team.
Well, he had those sales chops too, which helped. I didn't have those at the time, right? I was really afraid of sales. Like I was afraid of going, knocking on doors and cold calling and that kind of thing. He was really good at it, so we did that for about 5 years, and we, some years were profitable, most weren't. We kind of, we struggled for most of like running an agency when we were in the Hydrostone was kind of the last couple of years that we were doing it, and then we saw the opportunity, like an idea that I had way back when I was freelancing was like there should be a base camp for proposal software. And so I just kind of shelved that idea for a number of years until we started working on it. And then, long story short, we eventually sold our agency, not for profit, to get out of it, to get rid of it, and focused on Proposify. We had about 20, 30 paying customers. We raised a round with InnovaCore, and then we went from 20 or so customers in 2014, and now we're on the cusp of 4,000. So it's grown quickly in the last few years.
Awesome. So Kyle's going to walk us through the stuff that he learned to get him from 20 customers to 4,000. But Kyle, so like looking back even prior to Proposify, because this is something a lot of people probably don't know, like you guys had kind of like dug your heels in a little bit on another idea, hadn't you? Like Social Gopher?
Yeah.
Can we talk about Social
Sure.
Gopher a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, in fact, I think we tried out, I think Proposify was our 4th SaaS product that we tried.
It
was number 4.
Folks.
Yeah. Because when we started, we had this thing called SiteT, which was like a Wix or Squarespace kind of do-it-yourself website builder that we tried out.
Not ambitious at all.
No, not at all. And it was really hacked together. Like, it wasn't a real product. It was like more or less generating WordPress sites, that kind of thing. Like, it was pretty bad. Social Gopher was like a social media analytics. Think like Radian 6, but dumbed down quite a bit. That we tried that, and we also had built like an internal like extranet system called ExtraFi. We found an easy naming convention. So yeah, we tried out all these products, and they all failed for various reasons. We also kind of gave up really quickly on them, but yeah, I think doing a few products kind of helped us figure out the do's and don'ts.
For sure. So like one of the things that, because our journeys were parallel for a while and then they started to like go in different directions. One of the things that I thought was really interesting is we were both getting similar advice early in our startup life, which was like, okay, like you guys are bootstrapping on revenue from another business right now, but you should just fully commit to your startup. Like stop doing that. We're not going to invest in you unless you're fully committed to your startup. For all of the founders in the room that are not independently wealthy, that can't afford just to fully commit to their startup and need to figure out how to like, get a day gig to pay the job, like while they're building out their dream, what advice would you give to them?
So we actually tried to raise money about a year before we actually did, and InnovaCore, I'm going to name them. Who else is there? Like, really, there's like 2 or 3 in Atlantic, Canada. But like, InnovaCore looked at what we were doing, liked it, and then ultimately said no. And we hated them at the time for it. But ultimately, we're glad they did, because they didn't think that we were quite ready enough, and we weren't. Like, I don't think we had even launched our MVP yet. And I think we needed to just, like, spend that year trying to hustle to keep our agency going, try to sell it, try to get some level of like product market fit, which we didn't get at the time, but like just working on launching a product and iterating, like I think they needed to see, and any investor needs to see, that you're doing it with or without them. I think that's a key thing. Like, if you're just like, here's an idea, give me money so I can do it, investors aren't going to want to give it to you. When they see that you're just building it and you're getting customer validation, you're getting a few paying customers, like even if it's not huge, you're doing it. And once they see that, I think that's what everybody should try to do. Like, don't live off of this mentality that you need to raise money to achieve any level of like validation.
I think that's such a great point, because I know that there are other founders, like some of which are in the room, and we used to have all of these conversations, and we were like, why won't they just invest? Like, we've hit this target and this target and this target, but like in reflection, the thing that I know is that the money was never the thing that was stopping us from hitting where we needed to go. It wasn't the money, and it was ultimately like a lack of patience, and that lack of patience was created because we only have this small runway to make this happen. And so would you say that founders should try to make sure that they can kind of balance startup ambitions with like paying the bills?
Yeah, I mean, I think you should have a plan. I think plan Bs are great. You should have them. Like, this idea that you need to just, like, you've got an idea and you got a couple people to say it's a good idea, and now you just need to like jump out of the airplane without a parachute is kind of ridiculous. Like, have a job or have a side job or do freelance, and then just like kind of stoke the fires on on the side, and like, yeah, work a lot. Like, work in the evenings, do it all evening until 2 or 3 in the morning, and then get up and go to your 9 to 5, and then do that again, and do that for a year, right? And then once you've got something, now you can think about, okay, how do we jump off and like focus? This idea that you have to focus so soon is ridiculous, and then it's kind of like, taking off in the plane before you know you've got enough fuel to get to be able to land at where you want to go, right? You're kind of setting yourself up for failure.
I love that. So like, I had the privilege of like sitting down with Kyle a couple of weeks ago, and one of the things that always really impressed me about the way that they built Proposify is like, from like out of the gate, there was no question they were going after design agencies. Lots of people write proposals, government people write proposals, like they could have targeted lots of different agencies. And when money is not coming in quickly, I think that a lot of founders would be tempted to pivot and focus on a different customer. So I asked you, like, why did you decide, and how did you put your like line in the sand? It's like, we're focused on design agencies, and even when things were going badly, you kept that focus. Tell us about why you did that.
I think it's different for every company, but like, when you think you've solved a problem for a market, sometimes what they say is like, maybe your product's great, but it's for the wrong market and you need to pivot. That advice probably applies sometimes, but I think more often than not, or at least in our case, we knew our market because it was us. Like, we were a design agency, we knew we had the problem, and we had enough feedback from other similar companies saying, yes, this is a problem, I would love a solution. Our solution just wasn't very good. And it wasn't good for a long time because we were...
Proposify. It was good.
Yeah, you were very polite, though.
Yeah,
you said it's nice, you just didn't pay for it.
Good. Well, I wouldn't pay. I paid $11 for a few months.
Oh, you did?
I was like, this is $11 every month, and it's not there yet.
Right. I'll never forget that.
I'm sorry. I was like, they'll never even notice. They probably have so many customers by now.
No, but like, we had people, like, even people I'm sure some people in here would know, in the local startup community, who were fans of the idea and the vision, and then when they saw the product, emailed me and said, I don't get it. Like, you're competing with Adobe, or are you trying to build PowerPoint? Like, I don't see where it's going. So we did get people that were like, I don't get it. But here's what kept us going, was the fact that the people that we were actually targeting as customers did get it. The product just wasn't good enough. And so we just had to work until it was good enough. Mm-hmm. It wasn't about getting impatient and going, well, maybe we should go after lawyers. Maybe we should go. Like, we thought about all that stuff, but ultimately, the fact that we could get, 3, 4, 5 paying companies who were kind of within our target demographic made us know, like, if you can get 5, you can get 10. If you can get 10, you can get 100, and so forth. Like, if you can get a few people that buy into your vision, you can get a lot more. They just don't know about it. or the product's not good enough. But like staying focused and being patient and just working on it until it's there is, I think, the hardest thing to do.
Absolutely. So, like, one of the things we chatted about earlier is I remember it wasn't that long ago where we were sitting down, you were telling me that you were learning to write PHP and that you weren't doing very well at it. And as of recent, you went and spoke at an event called Traffic and Conversions by Digital Marketer, which is one of the like seminal like marketing events across like North America. So, what made you decide to pivot your energy away from trying to learn code to being a marketer?
I think I still want to learn code, and I know it to a certain degree, but like just not enough to. I wouldn't be able to like actually be a developer at my company. Like I wouldn't cut the
You wouldn't
mustard.
hire yourself.
I wouldn't hire myself. My CTO wouldn't hire me. Um, no, I think it's good to always be learning and always be reading and trying to know as much as you can. Like I think one of the problems I have with a lot of startup founders is that they don't want to be practitioners. They just want to have ideas and then get other people to execute those ideas for them. And of course they have to raise money to do that. So they're just like, I need other people to build my startup for me. I think if you're a founder, you should know enough about SEO, content marketing, sales, product, UX, UI, to be able to get it to the point where it's generating enough cash to hire people. I think more people need to just learn the practitionership a little bit. Like if you're building a software company, learn how software is built, right? Don't be like, well, I don't need to learn that. I'm a sales guy or girl, you know.
Absolutely. So, like, was there a stage now? There's some stories that you've told around when you were really downtrodden and things were not going as well. You didn't have 4,000 paying customers. You weren't refusing like Series A money from investors. Things were not where they are today. So, talk about like when you were riding across the Dartmouth ferry and you didn't have money to get all the way across. What was going through your head then, and how did you decide to keep pushing?
People love that story. I should clarify that it was that particular day. It wasn't like I went 6 months of like not having a dollar to get across the bridge, but...
That would make the story better, Kyle.
Oh, shit. All right. It was 6 months. I couldn't get across the bridge. I was stuck in Dartmouth. Yeah, no, I mean, there was one point where basically the Headspace business account was overdrawn and my personal account was overdrawn and I basically had no cash on me, so I was like, shit, I'm not getting across the bridge. And even though that was only for about a day because we were waiting for payments to come in, it was still that like pause for reflection of like, what the fuck am I doing with my life? You know, like people I went to school with or people who are kind of my peers are pulling, you know, they're working somewhere, they're doing all right. They're adulting somewhere. I almost gave up several times. Like I think there was a point actually, I told Kevin this recently, my co-founder, that like there was a point where I was actually considering just telling him, look, go with Proposify, run with it. I'm out. I'm done. There was a period in those days where like he was the one sort of saying like, no, you got this, and I didn't even believe it, but I just kept working on it. I worked on it because I enjoyed the struggle, I guess. I don't know.
So let's talk about that though. So like you had a co-founder who you felt accountable to, and even when things were dark, you wanted to keep working. Like talk about your co-founder relationship and how that affected the growth of your company.
Yeah, Kevin and I are really different. I think this is something that could help a lot of people is if you try to find a co-founder that's too much like you run into problems. If you're both, if you both offer the same skill set and the same experience and you both went to school together, you're not really offering each other that much. Where Kevin is 20 years older than me. He's in his, almost mid-50s. He loves it when I remind him of that. But, he comes from a whole other background. He's American, doesn't have a history in software or design or anything like that. It's like running a bar and flipping houses.
Sure, that's right.
Yeah.
When I first met Kevin.
So we just have a lot of differences, and it started off as him being kind of my mentor, I guess, and teaching me a lot about sales and entrepreneurship when I was just like, I didn't grow up in that kind of environment.
Can you share a little bit where you did grow up, just for the people at home?
Cole Harbour, Nova Scotia. my mother is a nurse, and my dad was a maintenance worker in a nursing home.
Blue collar brilliance.
Yeah. And they, even when I was like going freelance, they didn't want me to do that. Or they're one of those people that read into the notion that like, oh, 9 out of 10 businesses fail. Like, business is risky, you shouldn't do it, go work for somebody. Like, that was kind of what I grew up with. So I didn't think I wanted to be an entrepreneur, but, I sort of resisted it anyway.
It was your calling.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, maybe. But yeah, no, Kevin and I are really different. I think we both like push each other to move forward. We both challenge each other, but we also, it's become like an old marriage where we've just been together for so long, not in that way, but like, you know what I mean? Where we can read each other. We don't even really fight now. Like, we're sort of in that like married couple state. I don't know.
So one of the things that Kyle and I got together before this, and we just had a couple glasses of wine, and we were talking about like some of the things we've learned in our startup journey and some of the things we want founders to know earlier. So anybody in the room who is earlier in their journey than we are, and I feel like in startup land, like even 3 years, you're like a dinosaur. So like we're dinosaurs.
That's right.
What would be the advice that you witnessed or the advice that you took that was great? Like, let's start with like truth, like something that you would recommend people in this room do, and then share a word of caution.
I mean, we were talking about this a little bit. I think what helped me a lot was I didn't start Proposify at like 3 years ago, fresh out of college, or coming from like, I don't know, a fishing background, or you know what I mean? Like, I had sort of,
You knew the
I was in the trenches for a long, long time. Like 2003, I think, was when I graduated college and started working at agencies. So the whole period of like working in agencies, freelancing, starting my own business, which was ultimately a failure, was like 10 years of school, right? Before getting to here. It's like we talked about when bands are an overnight success and they've been, hustling strip malls and karaoke bars for 10 years prior, right? Like, there's a certain amount of, you just need to, sometimes it's better to just go work for somebody for a few years and learn the chops, learn the business before you try to start your own. I think sometimes people just aren't patient. They're 22 and they just want to be a founder because it's really sexy and cool to be one now.
How sexy is it though? Like,
oh yeah, on Instagram it's sexy.
But in reality, is the day-to-day life of being a founder sexy? Because in my experience, I would say like you think it's gonna be sexy, and then you get into it, and you're like, this is fucking awful.
It is awful. You're eating shit for years.
Exactly. But there are these awesome moments that make every turd worth it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a roller coaster, even no matter what stage you're at, I think. Like, I was talking about earlier how, like, if our sale, even now, if our sales, like, dips 1 month, I'm just freaking out and, like, it's all crumbling. Like, that roller coaster of emotion of, it is worth it. But I think a lot of people just don't have the patience to see it through. Like, because they know of some entrepreneurs that are successful millionaires by 23, they're like, well, if I'm not, then I'm a failure. It's like, sometimes you gotta wait till you're 30, 40, 50, 60 to like actually see success. So you have to enjoy the journey.
Fun factoid. The average millionaire has gone bankrupt 2.5 times and hits their big idea at 40. So for anybody in the room,
yeah.
So that's your like piece of like advice, which is be patient. If we were to boil it down to anything, it's patience matters.
Yeah.
What would you say? So that's what people can avoid. Like, don't be impatient. Like, recognize that it takes time.
Yeah.
If you have learned one thing along your journey that you feel like was really valuable in the growth of the company, what would you say that is? And how could founders apply that to their business?
We talked about like SaaS being B2B SaaS being a very easy business model. I think, especially here in Halifax, a lot of people are, they get excited by Snapchat, they get excited by Uber and Airbnb, and so they want to be the next Airbnb. They don't want to be the next two-sided marketplace or the next social network, but realizing that, that's a very difficult path to revenue, it's success. And SaaS by comparison, is relatively easy. It's not easy, but it's relatively easy compared to those models. So like choosing a business model where like, you know, if you're a small SaaS product that's like in a very crowded market, maybe doing, you know, CRM or help desk, and you're the like 72nd rated CRM in your market, you can still make money, right? But the chances of you being a Snapchat are, I don't know, billion to one, million to one. I don't know what the odds are, but it's very, very rare. So like just pick a good model that has recurring revenue where people pay you for a product, and you know, focus on that.
I 100% agree. So like in my startup journey, we started as a two-sided marketplace, pre-revenue, and we were growing faster than people that are in the market today that are worth billions of dollars. But what I did not recognize was that I was not in the same market as them, and I wasn't able to raise the same amount of money that they raised. And so our growth didn't really matter that much, because what mattered was, can I sustain this? Can I build a team that is going to allow me to continue this? And then we pivoted to this, like the absolute worst business model, which is a social network, which is way harder. And ultimately, we made a second pivot to what I would consider to be closer to a SaaS model. It was so much easier. Like in one email, we were doing like 7K a month. Like,
wow.
It was, we'd had the opportunity to build up an audience,
Yeah.
but in terms of ease to market and feeling validated that we were making the right choice. So like, I would say that recognize the market that you're playing in and the metrics that mean success for your business. And if success for your business requires virality and cash, and you're in Nova Scotia, think about how you're going to get those.
Yeah.
Because those are both hard things to get in Nova Scotia. They're both hard things. Virality is hard always.
Right.
Cash is hard in Nova Scotia. So like.
Yeah, but you can, and to your point, you can be in Nova Scotia and sell to the rest of the world.
Absolutely.
Much easier, right?
So talk about that. So you just came back from one of the best like marketing conferences. Tell me about some of your takeaways from that. So you got exposed to different marketers that are like approaching things differently. Not all of them are even startup marketers. Some of them are doing like infopreneur businesses and whatnot. Like, talk about what you took away from that conference.
Yeah, I mean, it was being able to speak at that conference was sort of part of, you know, it was like, oh, I'm so brilliant that they found me randomly on the internet and asked me to speak. Like, I knew the people putting it on, and a lot of it was like building up relationships with people over a long time. In particular, Marcus Murphy, who's like the head of sales at Digital Marketer, and Ryan Dice, who's a well-known sort of marketer, who's the CEO of Digital Marketer. It was like just going to conferences and meeting those guys, and then they sold us on a sponsorship, and I said, okay, I'll buy your sponsorship if you let me speak, because we get a lot of brand value from that. So yeah, I mean, I think conferences are great when the timing is right. Like if you've already got a product that's out there and it's growing, and you know, you've essentially reached product market fit, I think it makes sense. But you know, like we were, I think some people gave us advice in the early days, pre-product market fit, of like, you need to get to conferences, you need to build a sales team. And we actually specifically said, no, we're not doing any of that. We're going to hire another developer with that little cash we have and keep working on product. And that was a good decision. Like, we did not put a lot of money into sales and marketing early on.
Talk about how you did those gut checks. When you get recommendations from people who have been in this industry longer, who have potentially seen successful exits, and who have an opinion that's worth pausing on and considering. Like, at the end of the day, when you and Kevin sat down and you talked about the advice you were getting, how did you decide what was right for Proposify?
It's hard to say, because a lot of it is gut. Like, we talked about that earlier, that there's no real simple way of saying, like, take this, you know, if you take this advice and it's right and you're wrong, or you're wrong and it's right, like, there's no simple way to say always take advice or never take advice. Like, it all just depends on the circumstances. I think sometimes in the past we didn't take advice and we should have, and other times we ignored it and it turned out okay. So I really have no framework for that.
Just like shoot like in a bucket and see what happens. Like flip a coin.
Well, I mean, doing a gut check. You mentioned that as well. That one of your regrets is, like you said, that sometimes you listen to advice when your gut was telling you not to. And so I think gut check is good.
I agree.
Right?
Yeah, I agree.
And the people giving you advice are risking nothing.
Mhm.
Anybody can give advice.
That's so true. And one of the big takeaways that I learned, and I always try to rein myself in because I'm somebody who loves to share insights and talk about my time in the trenches. But I try to rein myself in and not to prescribe to anybody because ultimately every business is different and they know a lot more about their market and their audience than I do.
Yeah.
And so I would say that a good rule of thumb when it comes to taking advice from people who are counseling you is to really get a sense of how well do they know your target customer, because at the end of the day you should know your target customer better than anybody else. And if you do, chances are that you understand what matters to them, and that sometimes the counsel that you get, you have to kind of gut check it with, do they understand my target customer? Do they really, have they been in the trenches? You guys had been a design agency, so you knew the pain.
Yeah.
And I think that ultimately listening to great advice and then also kind of putting it through a filter, which is, do they know the pain? Because all we do as founders is we kill pain.
Yeah.
And if you kill pain well, you get paid well. And if you are a vitamin, you die.